Okay, thank you. All right, welcome everyone, and thank you for spending the next hour with us. Might give or take a couple minutes. Um, this is an exciting topic, book discussion for me. My name is Julie Trone. I am the chair of our Zonta District 12 Action for Environment and Gender Equality Committee. We've been working together for about 3 years now, and we have done so much good work. But along with that, I work with an international Zonta Says Now work group, and we just presented at the Commission on the Status of Women, CSW 68, parallel event with the UN Women's Forum in March, and this book was included, and the information on this book was included. So I have a lot of passion for this topic and the subject and the information. It actually elevated me to a purpose that feels right for me. So I hope you will enjoy it. If you haven't read it, that's okay. Hopefully you'll want to after this discussion. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to show you the book, Doughnut Economics. See all my sticky notes? Those are all the areas that I found so interesting. And so maybe if you read the book, you will too. So let's get started. We are going to watch a mini video. I am going to share my screen. Let's see. Hopefully there's no, oh, here we go. Okay. Give me a moment to get things ready. All right. Again, I am Julie Trone, and we're talking about the book Doughnut Economics, written by Kate Raworth. She's an economist in the UK. I believe she's in Ireland. She is a world-known economist because of this particular economic model. You see it on the left in part, and the book on the right. And she has been so well regarded that she's part of a group called the Club of Rome. So if you've ever heard of the Club of Rome, or if you haven't heard of it, that is a group of thinkers, like a big think tank, and they really work together, scientists, researchers, economists, all of the biggest and brightest brains out there to try to solve some of the world's problems. She is actually on the road to doing that, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that now. Let's go on. I did want to, on page 3 and 4 of the book, I wanted to read this quote to you before we go to the next slide. It's from a 20th century inventor by the name of Buckmaster Fuller. And he once said, "You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete." All right, and give me a minute. I'm going to mute a few people. Let's see if that works. All right, everybody, if you're not muted, please mute. Okay. All right, here we go. This is Kate Raworth. I want you to hear her voice and just hear this 1.5-minute video. It's very good. It tells you a lot about what this Doughnut Economics means to her and how it came about. And the other thing is technically, if your audio on your computer is down, because I'm sharing the sound, so and my audio is up all the way. So use your own audio functions for louder or less loud to hear this. All right, so let's go ahead and get started.
So a few years ago, I tried to draw a picture because I love drawing pictures. I tried to draw a picture of the world that we want to live in. And it, silly though it sounds, it came out looking like a donut, an American one with a hole in the middle. So imagine a donut, there's the outside, and then there's the inside, and there's that hole in the middle. In the hole in the middle, That's a space of deprivation, a space of shortfall where people don't have the resources to meet the essentials of life, like they don't have enough food or education, they don't have access to electricity, enough income, they don't have decent housing. So it's a space of shortfall, and we want to get people out of that hole in the middle into the donut. But we want to do that for the whole world, making sure that we also don't go beyond the donut's outer crust, because that's a space of ecological overshoot where humanity puts more pressure on the planet than the planet can take, and we start causing climate change or massive loss of biodiversity. We start creating a hole in the ozone layer or polluting Earth with chemicals that we add to it. So we need to both get people out of deprivation and poverty, but also protect Earth and protect these fundamental life-supporting systems that keep us alive. Those are the two sides of human well-being, the inside and the outside of the donut. And the 21st century challenge is a unique one. It's to get everybody out of poverty while coming back in at the same time. That's never been taken on before. And that's partly why we need to rewrite economics, because it's a completely new way of looking at what human well-being is.
I just love that video because she explains it so well. I mean, she did create it. We're going to go a little bit deeper into this based on what I've read in the book. And if you cannot see the whole slide, if you put your cursor on the top of where all the little everyone's name is, and you tap on the first one, it'll make it nice and small, and then you can't see anyone. You can see the whole slide. Just a little dot or a little dash. Okay. So many of us are Zontians, some of us here are not, and Zonta's mission is to build a better world for women and girls, and one of those missions includes pulling women out of poverty. On page 4 in the book, it does show, and many of us are aware, that worldwide 1 in 9 people are hungry every day. And so poverty and hunger sometimes are two different things, but in poverty, something like 158 or 153 million women worldwide are in poverty. Normally, they're the caretakers of their children. So as climate gets worse, that number is essentially going to double. That's why Doughnut Economics is so important. Climate change is so important too, or climate action. So you can see by the donut that I took offline, but it's in the book. The climate, it's a measurable economic model. So each city, region, state, and country can use this as a measure. If you see all the red in the inside, you know social justice issues are extremely high. The red on the outside, those are the areas of climate change that region or city has shot beyond what is sustainable. So what is important about this? What I felt like in the book, the Kate Raworth explains how we go from the history of the gross domestic product, which we call the GDP, a global economic model that we've been using for not centuries, but for decades and decades, and how that measures up to what our needs are today. And why haven't we actually evolved our economic models to something that is more sustainable and helps find that safe and just space for all humans rather than inequality. And GDP actually was not created by anyone thinking about gender equality, social justice. It's just about growth. Okay, next slide. So here's a little bit more about GDP. So what I like to do is ask questions for people to think. We won't answer them yet, but just keep them in the back of your mind. So gross national product, I have gross national product. That's my typo. It's gross domestic product. That's our current global economy. And like I said, doesn't factor in equality or equity. It embraces growth. That's on page 22. So let's think about, and the book does go through this periodically, is do we have enough resources worldwide to continue growing? And if not, can we see a bigger picture that includes saving the planet and humanity? All of humanity, not just those that have more money and more power. You can see on the chart I put in here about the real GDP in the US over time since 1930. I think that says I can put my reading glasses on. I'll tell you what that says. 1930 to 2020. You can see how dramatically it shifts up and down and up and down and up and down. But if you think about that 0% line, think about it in terms of humanity. How many people in our country and in our world are below the poverty line if that zero represented poverty line? And that's millions and millions of people who don't even get the benefit of the principle of growth. That is why it's so important to me as a Zontian, and hopefully it'll be important to you, that we look at other models that are measurable and factor in empowering women. So can we live within that donut? Boy, that is a big question. I'm going to keep going and maybe we can answer that later. So here's a couple of quotes from the book and a quote that a lot of us already know about and maybe some of us have said or heard someone say. So on page 146, it talks about inequality. And they've measured that higher levels of national inequality go hand in hand with increased ecological degradation. In the United States alone, many people don't think there's climate change going on in their own backyard, but weather disasters are an indicator of climate changing. Our food systems, food security, food insecurity, the availability of water, those are all measurable and they are all depleting in the United States. We actually have less food based because of climate change, and we have dwindling water supplies, more poverty, things like that. So why is that? Well, it's in part because social inequality fuels status competition and conspicuous consumption. I'd like to go farther than that and say we have been taught for generations. Now, you saw that chart before 1930. Once the Industrial Revolution hit, we were taught, and that was when my grandparents, and I'm 60 something right now. So that was a long time ago. We were taught to consume. The more, the better. He who dies with the most toys wins. He who has the most food. Overconsumption, overeating, overpurchasing, more. This is a problem because it has depleted our resources, has created in us more inequality between people who have and those who do not. It has not actually benefited our economy across the board with everybody. So that is the problem, and that is what she illustrates in the book. And you see that here on the blue square. Contrary to the founding theories of development economics, inequality does not make economies grow faster, it slows them down. So when your populations that are low income, below the poverty line, homelessness, they all add to this comment. As it grows and gets larger, our economy cannot grow faster. And is that really what we need right now? And this is what she says. The most, I guess, surprising and hard to swallow part of this is she actually lays out how economically we can get to a point so everyone's in the donut. And I'm going to leave that part for you to read about. It's fascinating, and it's something that you really have to think about introspectively and look at what you do, who you are as a consumer, and how can you make it better. All right, going to the next slide. All right, so Kate posed a few questions to ponder. And I was wondering about it, so I thought, well, let's talk about this. So this is already up to chapter 7, the Be Agnostic About Growth chapter, because she throws out these questions. I think questions are super important for everyone to ask, because we haven't been taught in education to be good question askers, and we haven't been taught to be good answerers either. A lot of times we're dismissed, or you don't know what you're talking about, or I have no time, or maybe they give you an answer that you really don't understand and you need more help. Whatever the reason is, we need to ask more questions. So Kate posed, how are we socially locked in or addicted to or stuck on GDP growth? What would it take to switch sides, GDP to the donut? And is green growth possible? And I think I talked about this already, but it is a extra exclamation point that no country has ever ended human deprivation without a growing economy, yet no country has ever ended ecological degradation with one. So that's a quandary that we are all in, that everyone needs to work on, I believe, or it's not going to happen. The Doughnut economic model and a supportive network of people taking action is called DEAL, Doughnut Economics Action Lab. And I actually put the website in there. You can just, if you Google Doughnut Economics, or even DEAL in all caps, you will find it. Those dots are the community of people working on Doughnut Economics. That doesn't mean every city, every country, and I have more information on that. But the Be Agnostic About Growth, my question is, why is this important? As Zontians who are trying to build a better world for women and girls, it means we get to help women by lifting them out of poverty and in a means that makes sense, that doesn't take away from the bottom line of people trying to build a business, but it evens out the amount of money used so that everyone can thrive. I believe we're all going to have to sacrifice in the next few years anyway. And why not do it in a way that makes everyone thrive and actually helps the planet and builds new businesses that are ecologically safe and effective and sustainable. So this is a big change to me, from what I've learned, will actually be an uphill climb, but I really think it's necessary for planetary and human survival. And I don't want to sound very doomsday, and I probably do to some of you. However, I've been working on this for a number of years, and this model has been given me the most hope. This book has given me the most hope and the most purpose, rather than listening to all of the commentary, either on the news or on Google search, or what people are saying or denying or voting against or voting for. It actually really helped me out a lot. So that's why I like it so much. So I do hope you check out the Action Lab. We're going to go into a discussion period, but before we go, I wanted to read to you a list that I've gotten, and I think it's longer. You saw that map of the world with all the dots on it, but I'm going to list you some of the places that are actually working with Doughnut Economics. The Netherlands, Scotland, Wales, South Africa, India, Now, I can't say as a whole, but some of them, the whole country, some of them maybe in part. Cities, Melbourne, Australia, Brussels, Berlin, Toronto. There are some cities in California. I couldn't find them all. I thought Pomona, but I have to double check. Portland, Oregon, and Philadelphia are all on board. There are people trying to make this work. So I want to give you this disclaimer because I feel like everyone deserves to have a safe discussion space. Whether you want to read this book or you already have, whether you agree with me or not, this is a safe place to agree or disagree. I want to hear from you, whether you agree or disagree. But let's not try to change anyone's mind, which sounds like I kind of was today anyway, but I'm very passionate about this subject. And or give negative comments. That's a typical Zoom disclaimer there. So 2 questions just to get people started. What comes to mind after this short review of the book? And how can we use it as a foundational method to build a better world for women and girls, or for people in general, or our planet? So we can go beyond these 2 questions. So I'm going to take off my slides and stop my share. And here we go. Hello, everyone.
Thanks, Julie.
I don't know how many people we have. Just 6? We have 6 here at this point?
I see 9.
9. We have 9. Excellent. All right. So you're welcome to use the raise the hand function and also unmute at the same time, or one or the other first, so we can have a discussion. And if anyone has a question, use the raise the hand or just raise your hand. You can put your video back on, and let's get started with some great conversation. Kay Myers, go ahead. Whenever you're ready, Kay.
You're muted, Kay.
It'll come. She'll get it. It's lower left menu bar. You'll see the mute button, Kay. I can unmute you maybe. Let me unmute.
I found it. There it was. It doesn't show up all the time. I have to get the right stroke and then it shows up. Meaning machine stroke, not my stroke. Just a couple thoughts. I'm still working on the donut diagram and understanding it, especially in terms of ecological limitations. So I'm still struggling with that a little bit. And just a couple comments. How I think the book, as far as I've read, really delves into businesses and corporations and how to change from that linear, wasteful model into a regenerative model, which I thought was just absolutely wonderful. And it starts off with the household, which is always ignored in GDP models and so forth. So that's another big one. And that may be something that we want to think more about. The big one that I just see ignored by everybody is this obvious connection between women and the survival and carrying capacity of the planet. We cannot continue to grow a global population, human population. We are way over capacity. Who holds the key to that? I'm sorry, but it's a biological function primarily controlled by women. And there's a really hot topic for you. Mm-hmm. So that's that thought. But it has to be choice, and it has to be a lot of education. So yeah. I'll put that in the thing as another possible thing that can be discussed further in Zonta. The last one is that the book doesn't go into political realm at all. which is, I understand why it doesn't. But we are faced with some huge political choices in the United States, and it's going in the wrong direction. And so that just has to be another component that we have to address. That's all. I'll take my hand down
All
if I
right.
can find
Thanks,
the
Kay.
bar.
That was a very rich 3 statements that all are interconnected, if you ask me. So thank you for that.
Yes.
Liz, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I just attended a fascinating workshop sponsored by Project Drawdown. I would love everybody to check their work. And they mentioned Doughnut Economics in the last session, which was my first session. It was called something like sustainable farming, something like that. Anyway, one thing to address women is we see that as women are educated, families tend to get smaller. And the large families that do exist tend to be in countries where their environmental impact is small. So they might be living on a farm, if they're lucky, I guess, or in a city, but not creating the environmental impact that we in a country like the United States cause. He talked a lot about farming, of course. Farmers are not the enemy. They are our heroes. And he says that about 40% of the land dedicated to farming and ranching is wasted. And the people that are wasting that land is us, you and me, by overconsumption, not only of food, but the other products that go into our cell phones and clothes, you name it, and throw away culture. Huge wardrobes that we throw half the clothing away, just this throwaway culture, overconsumption, over purchasing, you name it. So we as individuals can do a lot. And then a third thing I wanted to say, I got to the part of the book where Kate Raworth started talking about redistribution of land, and I'm going like, oh no, nobody in the USA will like hearing about that. But she's not talking about land as you and I think about it so much as resources. And one of those resources is education. And she mentions a young man named William, who is in Malawi, and he was a 14-year-old who had to drop school. His parents couldn't afford it. He got a book and started building a windmill, and his community made fun of him. Well, he built the windmill, and he provided his family electricity, and soon everybody in the community is lining up to, charge up their cell phones at his house. Well, he got a scholarship to study at a university in the United States. He's back in Malawi. And he says, access to information would make a huge difference to all the people in other countries and helping them to develop their own ideas and become more individually sustainable. And I'd like to pass the conversation on to Steve, because he really lives the life. He moved from Colorado to California to become self-sustaining. Do you mind saying a couple of things, Stephen?
No, I don't mind. Hi, I'm
Hi.
Steve. I used to live in Colorado Springs. I was a reporter at the Gazette. And then when I asked too many hard questions, they showed me to the door, and a venture capitalist group bought the paper and fired everybody else that was new. And so I moved away from journalism, at least as a career, into the nonprofit sector. And I started out being a kind of a communications director for a small nonprofit called the Pikes Peak Justice and Peace Commission. And I did that for about a decade. And in the course of that nonprofit work, I discovered permaculture. And permaculture is a way of really defining and working on sustainability. I think sustainability has kind of gone the way of not really meaning anything anymore. Just sort of like green doesn't really mean anything anymore, because everybody says, well, we're doing green stuff, go green, we're doing sustainability. And it isn't really defined. And permaculture kind of has defined that. It was developed out of Australia in the late 70s, about the time the Club of Rome was publishing Limits to Growth, which I suppose most people our age read in the 70s, basically saying that if all the trends continued on their trajectories, we'd see collapse right about now. And so Club of Rome was right on track. The world has not listened. We keep having climate summits, God bless them, but the carbon emissions are higher than ever. So the world doesn't want to be sustainable, and the world doesn't want to think long term and in terms of 7 generations going forward. The world just wants it now, and they want more now, and it's all of us. So it's a big problem, and so my hope and in a sense, my donut is, can I be as self-reliant and simple as possible in my own life? And can I help my community be self-reliant and resilient? Can we produce more, if not most of our own food? Can we build our houses out of materials that we find in our area? Can we not drive, but walk, bike, to the places we need to go? Can we kind of shrink and shrink our energy and resource use? And so permaculture is just a kind of a practical way to do that. And we're developing a homestead on 1/3 of an acre with a goal of producing most of our own food in about 3 years. And we're capturing rain and building soil with composting and mulching. And there's a whole array of systems that we implement. So I'm going on and on, but I think that sustainability can be highly defined, and I'm interested to see how this economist tries to define an economic model, because right now I'm basically embracing a localist approach to everything, and I'd like to see how she approaches things.
Thank you,
And she
Steve.
does
That was
talk a lot
lovely.
about a local approach. Everybody all over the planet doing little things, and one of those things needs to have access to information so that we can all build windmills.
Yes. So, Steve, you brought up a couple great points before our next person wants to chat with the permaculture and the sustainability and shrinking our footprint. To lift women up, giving them more leadership and decision-making roles, making sure girls are encouraged to go to school and finish school and not get married under the age of 18 and not have babies as a teenager, to encourage that, I guess, ability to grow up as an adult without all of the burdens of being a parent and lack of education. That part actually plays a huge role. That's lifting people out of poverty, but with permaculture and using less resources. And I'll tell you from my experience, when we teach our communities to start growing their own food, sharing the food we grow with those who are less able. And sometimes less able means people who live in apartment buildings. Working with our local leaders to have compost available for, like New York, Brooklyn is doing, Brooklyn, New York, for people in apartment buildings, while people who live on any kind of land can have compost. And also working with Zontians and other clubs who offer scholarships to make sure our children know that they can get help with going to school. They can get financial aid, tuition through scholarship money. So it's an intricate web we weave, and I believe that the donut model allows us to first take a look at our community. So the one you're in, Steve, actually is doing well with the ecological outside of the donut, but many people, if not all of us, our passions are a focal point, so we don't realize the inequities that are happening that are in the inside of the circle. And so how do we address those? So like I said, one of those is sharing your produce, helping them with compost, having educational programs from your utilities group. I went to the car show the other day, and the local Excel Energy is actually giving rebates to buy hybrids and electric cars and putting electric charging stations in your own home. And the combination, if you did both, is $6,300 of rebates. So there are companies like Liz was talking about that, or one of you were saying about how, or I think it was Kay, about corporations and what can they do to help too. So it's going to take all of us. But this book actually really maps out why and somewhat how. There's the last chapter is about action. So if you read the book, everyone, you got to read the last chapter to see if anything sparks. Who else wants to say something, talk about something they learned, even have a disagreement about all of this? Either way, we want to hear your voice. You can unmute, raise your hand. Anything while you're thinking? I'm going to the action chapter.
I was going to say that there are so many good ideas in the book, and no one solution works for everyone.
Right.
This country's needs or your community's needs are going to be very different from another country's needs.
Yes. So some of the countries that are doing a really good job, Kay raised her hand. So give me 1 second, Kay, and then Margie, we're going to let Margie go, then Kay. But Costa Rica actually does the best job on the planet with Doughnut Economics. So if you want to Google that someday. And also in Bhutan, they're using well-being economy, which is very similar. So if you ever want to Google that. Margie, what did you have to say? And then we'll go to Kay. Sorry, Kay.
Oh, I thought Pat had her hand up that she wanted to speak. I
Oh,
didn't know if you saw that, and now
I
it's.
didn't see that.
Yeah, unmute Pat. I see that you're still muted. Go to the 3 dots above your picture on the upper right, and you can unmute. There she is.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Did you have your hand up?
No, I didn't. No,
Oh.
I'm sorry.
All right.
Well, would you like to add something while you're on unmuted?
No, I haven't read the book, and I
Oh,
came,
you need to. Yeah, okay.
so I'm still a little fuzzy on the Doughnut Economics concept, so I'll have to get up to speed on that.
Yeah. All right, Kay, you're on.
I have Heather Hopkins under my picture. I'm trying to figure out why. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Something's not working. I'm not Heather Hopkins. I wish that Kate Raworth were a citizen of the United States. I think she should be, well, no, I would love to see her nominated for a Nobel Prize. I really think this has that kind of impact, and that kind of recognition would get her recognition, at least in some in the US as well as globally. Sometimes I think we in the US think that if it's not invented here, it's not worth thinking about. So that's a little snide comment. But anyway, so it's wonderful. And it's how do we, it's not getting the play it needs, I think. I guess that's what I come away with. So any thoughts on that as to how does it become more widely discussed, talked about, whatever?
It would be good to see a list of cities in the US. Of course, that's another US centric thing. But yeah, look at Amsterdam. The entire city of Amsterdam is using Doughnut Economics as its goal or as its vision.
Mhm.
And of course, many European countries do such a good job of recycling and picking up waste and, helping farmers. Although to be honest, right now in the current time in the in Holland, in the Netherlands, farmers are on strike because they don't like some of the things that the government is asking them to do in order to reduce their environmental impact. And part of an environmental impact of farming is, how do we ship food? How far do we ship food? A little known fact is the Netherlands is, after the USA, the second largest exporter of food in the world.
Mhm.
Tiny little Netherlands.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's
That's
so
an
much involved. It is a web, like you said, Julie.
Yes, and it comes down to what do we want to do? If you're curious about the book or the economics and you want to look at it online, there's many videos. Kate has been on so many different programs, so you can actually listen for an hour and get the gist of the book. But what everyone is saying to me speaks to the fact that it all comes down to survival. So climate change, whether you believe in it or not, is affecting our food availability, and because of soil degradation and because of extreme weather events that have been wiping out crops, like in Pakistan that wiped out, I think they're like 20% of the world's cotton industry, and a flood wiped out all of it a couple years ago. Because of the floods, then they couldn't harvest. Recently, I learned that in one of the African countries that's known for 80% of the cacao, which is chocolate farming, they are struggling. So all chocolate products worldwide will be less available, more expensive. So what I've seen is a lot of people, and Kay talked about the political issues in the United States. We tend to get politically divided and decide that the current leaders are responsible for the lack of food, the harsh conditions for water availability, water quality, lack of water for agriculture and for drinking water and bathing and cooking. And it's actually climate change that is contributing to this. The government has nothing to do with what is happening in our food systems as far as growing the food. The government has a lot to do with, in the United States, with the economics of the corporations that make processed food. And it's like 6 companies in the country that make all of that are like the top of the umbrella for all processed food. I think there's 6 or 7 companies. And this is where our national government or federal government can get involved with trying to lower pollution. And it's up to all of us as consumers to stop buying a lot of that junk food. And that means there'll be less junk food, better health, less plastic, trash. And Liz talked a lot about waste. Waste contributes, food alone, food waste, 40% of all food grown in the United States is thrown away in the trash. That contributes to something like 2 tons of methane a year. This is a yearly thing. Every year, people throw away 40% of their food. So if we can, as a community of all people, in every community, like Steve is doing, figure out how much food you need to grow, how much you need to share, how much you need to buy, and that's how much food you need to have, and not so you don't throw things away. I think Doughnut Economics really speaks to that part of the climate issues, is the problem with our heating planet with carbon and waste, food waste. And that food waste actually prevents food from going to people who can't afford food. So, yeah, we have a lot of work to do. I'm not going to go on. Who else wants to talk? Steve. Yeah. You are muted.
I had a thought about politics. I'm pretty cynical, as Liz knows. And what bothers me about politics is all the things that these two parties agree on, which is economic growth. Endless economic growth is one of the things that both parties agree on. And what I'm seeing is an opportunity for us who think differently to try to maybe, kind of shift the discussion. So what I'm seeing right now, for instance, they put out a jobs report, and the Democrats want to use the jobs report to see how good the Democrats are, and the Republicans want to use the jobs report to see how bad the government is. And that's their role. These parties, their role is to attack each other, to take credit for whatever's good, to blame the other for whatever's bad. They both have the same playbook. There's no high ground here. So when economics are discussed, I think we need to kind of put politics on pause and say, wait a second, the economy is not a partisan issue. One party doesn't make it good and the other party makes it bad. If you have a jobs report that says there's more jobs created than there were in the last 5 years, you also have a report that says that credit card debt is at an all-time historic high in the United States, meaning something along the lines of people can't afford what they're trying to buy, the lifestyle they're trying to afford, and they have to put all this debt on credit cards. We also have a report that says foreclosures are higher. So economic news is always a mixed bag, and it needs to be pulled away from the partisan politics and say, wait a second, how do we create an economy where everybody can get what they need? And it's not going to be because of some political party. It's going to be because of what we do.
Exactly. I agree. Does
This
anyone else
book
agree
taught
with
me-
that? I'd like to hear other people's comments about what Steve just said, because I agree that it has to go down to the local level, and every local level, working at the local level, and then now you have thousands of local levels and hundreds of thousands, that will make the change. Who wants to say something? Margie?
Well, I've got all kinds of things rolling around in my head. One thing, just yesterday in Custer, which is the county seat of the county that I live in, there was a march for protecting our water. So I don't know if you know South Dakota, we have 9 Native American reservations in South Dakota, and one of them has the poorest county in the United States. And then our other counties on the reservations aren't a whole lot better than that. But I live in the Black Hills, which is honorable and sacred land for the Native Americans. And so, we're in a quandary. I am a strong supporter of Native Americans. In our last legislature, there was a bill, a proposal to tax lithium extraction, which is happening in the Black Hills, not very far from where I live over there. Yeah, that bill was killed partly because the few Native Americans that we have in the legislature and the few Democrats that we have in the legislature, like 9, were opposed to the taxing because they're opposed to more mining in the Black Hills. And I agree with that. And then on the other hand, we know that the mining is going to take place, and this is lithium now. I mean, we've still got gold mining going on and probably other things also, but the lithium is the new push because the manufacturers need lithium for electronic batteries. So, so how do I look at that? I support the Native American land and no more mining. But on the other hand, we know that mining is going to take place. So why should we not tax that? So at least as a government, we get some monies back from the companies who are mining. So then we have a water issue here also in the Black Hills and in our state. And I don't know if you know, but I'm not sure in the year I should know this, but I don't. We had a huge encampment up at Standing Rock to prevent the pipeline from going across the Missouri River. We have all kinds of environmental issues in South Dakota. So the Doughnut Economics to me sounds like a good thing. And so I'm a licensed professional counselor. So I would like to bring up and ask the question, in her book, does she talk anywhere about human capacity and that we as a society have to take care of our humans in order to make life better for everybody? I mean, that includes women and girls and children. But also in our state, our Native Americans are probably mostly below the poverty line. And we have very well-educated Native Americans in the state also. But by and large, those who live on the reservations are in poverty. So because I'm a mental health professional, then my thing is always, we need to support mental health, education, therapy, whatever we can do so that people can achieve what they want to do. And that may not be economic, standards. It might be, and yet it applies to all the economics because they need clean water, they need food, they need safe and secure housing. They need roads. I mean, the reservations need a lot of help. To me, again, that goes back to human capacity. So those are my thoughts. That's my main question for Doughnut Economics. Does she address the human capacity issue?
Yes, she does. So she does it in chapter 3. It's called Nurture Human Nature, and from rational economic man to socially adaptable humans. So that's chapter 3. So I suggest that. A lot of the book is about the bigger picture and what can we do about it, but she does break down human nature, and she uses, I don't know if you're familiar, but you probably are, Schwartz's value circumplex, which shows the 10 basic personal values that are common across cultures. And so she talks about that, and she talks about just different aspects of bias, risk bias, availability bias, becoming, having a shift in perspective, not being such an isolationist. Like the United States, if you think about it, is kind of an isolationist country because it's enormous and it's us versus them in so many ways. And so she does talk about being interdependent in the human nature. Yeah. So, and she has some small scale examples and some larger examples, and she actually sketches out a new portrait of humanity. What does that look like? And that, I think, is the most people-oriented chapter in the book. As a counselor, I think that could speak to you.
Mm-hmm. Great.
And then a lot
I'd like
of
to add a sad commentary if I can.
Yeah.
So the federal government is forcing several states to talk about the Colorado River.
Mhm.
And an indigenous tribe, I think it was the Navajo, asked for a seat at the table of conversation and was denied.
Yeah, that's just awful. You have countries that are not as developed as ours, like Chile, who has been trying to build their entire governmental system, rebuild it to include all indigenous voices and women's voices. They've been working on that for a number of years. Hasn't passed. They're very conservative, but they're still working on it. If you think about that, like there are so many countries, like I said, we pretty much don't pay attention to what other countries are doing as if to me, and I think we're, as a country, might be a little more arrogant in that way. And that is so natural for a country that has been one of the most powerful countries in the world for so long. You get a little arrogant and you start thinking that, well, they're not as powerful, so why do we pay attention to them as much? And that, as far as what they're doing, but you can look around the world, like you talked about Amsterdam, and I listed all the countries that are working on Doughnut Economics. You look around the world and people are making a difference. They're taking charge. All you have to do is go to the U.S. Women's Forum to see how many women are involved in this movement. And there's so many movements in the United States. They're kind of under the radar, but they exist. So I'd like to, it's 8:01. I'd like to throw it out to anyone else who has a comment.
Well, I too feel very optimistic. I started talking about environment back when I joined Zonta in 1988. But only what, 3 years ago did Zonta International get on board, and that was thanks to our sisters in Australia, Zonta District 24. And now, you're going to get some pushback here in this part of the country. We get pushback from our Zonta sisters that don't want to talk about changing what we build our livelihood on, which is ranching and oil and gas and other things. But Arnold Schwarzenegger, I saw a little video from him, and he said, if you get pushback, stop talking about climate change and start talking about pollution. That's one thing that we can all agree on, and pollution causes climate change. And we can also talk about going back to our roots. How did our ancestors live? Our grandmothers didn't use plastic wrap, for example. Why do we have to use so much plastics? I mean, there's so many approaches. Never lose hope. There's amazing things happening around the planet. So many good people are saying, and nobody has all the ideas and all the solutions, but so many people are saying, now is the time. It is now.
Yeah, it's very now. That's why Zonta says now.
Yes.
That's Margie.
Yeah, we have a lot to learn from the Native Americans. And I'm really sad to hear that they're not included in this endeavor in Colorado. That's
Yeah, that's
and
very sad.
I mean, we struggle with that all the time. Our sorry, but our governor is.
Yeah, we know about your governor.
Liz, do you have any idea why they were denied a seat at the table? What would be the reason?
No, I read that, and I did not investigate as to why, but I can only imagine that they were not given the seat at the table for some reason. They were not maybe organized, and I don't know. I wasn't there, and I was just sad about that. But yeah,
that was a perfect opportunity to advocate and get as many people as you know to use your voice and say, that is wrong. That needs to, this indigenous tribe needs to be included because they're part of the solution. And how many women do you have on that at that decision-making table too? I really believe that women have to put on their brave mask and say, why? Why don't you do this? Why is this not happening? And they have more women and more women and more women, and men too, who support the women, and boys and girls, and just do what you can. And I know this is a little off topic, but I think everyone should do what they can to just use their voice. I think that is probably going to make a difference
I
everywhere.
invite everybody to like our Facebook page, Zonta Says Now, District 12. Sana, you live in Colorado Springs. I'd love to include you in our efforts. So just, you can contact us through Zonta Says Now, District 12, or Zonta Pikes Peak, and would love to get to know you as an individual. And everybody else, please give us a like and check out our wonderful set of resources at Zonta District 12 webpage for Zonta Says Now. A lot of the resources are for our district, or lifting Indigenous voices, and of course, lifting the voices of women.
I'm just writing it in the chat.
Yeah, and I included some links too.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, they're right up here.
I can't get my fingers on the right keys for some reason.
Oh, you did?
Zonta
Here's
District
our
12.
website,
Are you doing it, everyone?
zontadistrict12.org. Yeah, I just put it on, and you can Google this. There's so much going on. There's a workshop on Zoom, not Zoom. I think it's just on
I don't see
the
it.
internet.
Did you do it to everyone? Did it say to everyone?
It finally
Oh,
showed up.
maybe not. Yeah, maybe just to Susan. All right,
No,
here it is again.
Did you
Did
get
show
it?
up on mine now,
There it
finally.
is.
Oh yeah, I
It's there
got it.
now.
There you go. And go to Zonta Says Now. Yeah, great resource page. We have schools in different parts of the country that have contacted us to thank us because their students. It's so categorized in different areas of climate action and empowering women and just government, everything. So there's so
Films,
many
books,
categories that
everything.
it's
Yeah.
easy to go to a place of passion and say, hey, I want to learn this. Now, I don't have Doughnut Economics in there yet, but that's on my list to do next week. Thank you all for coming and listening.
Thanks, everyone. Have a lovely evening.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye. Have a great week.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone. Thank you, Liz, for setting this up.
You're welcome.
I'll talk to you soon.